So good morning. Peggy, he asked for people to provide their December 31, 2025 Tesla stock price predictions. Okay, so I got thinking about that. I was going to respond to him right away, and I went a little deeper in my thinking and took a few seconds or minutes or hours to think about this, and I decided I'd have the conversation with you first. Then I'll respond to Peggy. So I took a look and I said, all stock prices are going to be driven by the advances of those companies, by the missteps of those companies. And most companies, you can probably look at their balance sheet, their profit and loss. You could look at some expectations from history and project those, just like you could with my companies as I was building my companies. You could make some kind of an estimate of what was going to be coming in the future. I think you could suggest that Tesla's 2025 year-end price target would be the hardest ever to calculate of any company in history. And this is based on known information. It's the known information that's making it so hard to predict. So what are the big factors, biggest factors maybe in history that could impact the stock price? I'm going to do these 6 ideas in order. Maybe you'd like to add some down in the comments below what you think could have dramatic impacts on the price of the stock by the end of next year. I've been talking about 2026 as being the most, as the year when everything comes together for, I guess, almost the entire time I've been doing this show. And I still believe 2026 is going to be the year when everything comes together. But what does the stock market do? It tries to guesstimate that that's going to happen 3 months to a year ahead of when it's going to happen. And so the stock price is going to reflect this 2026 craziness sometime in 2025. So what are we talking about here? Well, number one, of course, will be the status of Optimus. And I suppose the one big deal next year in 2025 that could impact the stock in 2025, lots of things could. I'm sure we're going to see Optimus working in the factory. I'm sure we're going to see many more stories on Optimus in terms of what it can do or can't do, or what its capabilities are with its hands, what its software is doing, et cetera. I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. But there's going to be, at some point, there's going to be a reveal because it's going to be available to buy. Now, it's not going to be available I don't think for you and me to buy in our home yet, but there's going to be available for companies to buy. And so they're going to need to have a reveal, just like they did with the semi-truck. When that reveal happens, I believe that that's going to have a huge impact on the stock. And in this case, I think it won't be something that there's a big down, it falls off the next day, because this is going to be the most important reveal in history. All right, so that's number one. That's a huge one, a big one. Number two is going to be the status of Robotaxi. How many of them are in service by the end of 2025? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but where are we in that process of bringing the Robotaxi to the world? Well, by the end of 2025, we might be well along, okay? And that's going to have the second biggest impact maybe on any stock in history. Number three, the status of FSD licensing. How many deals have been made? Have any deals been made? We've been talking about FSD licensing for a very long time, and companies seem to be putting together little consortiums based on the skill sets that they all have with regard to, FSD, with regard to automated driving in general. So far, Tesla isn't one of those that we know of that has a deal with some other company, even though arguably, and many people argue this, Tesla is so far ahead in this subject matter that there's not even a close second. Anyway, number four, so that would, if there's an FSD licensing deal, that would, or 3 or 4, that could have a big impact on the stock by the end of 2025. Maybe that I would call that the third largest impact. Number 4, the status of cyber cab production. So one hand will be just the general factor of robotaxis out there, your and my cars out there being offered as a service to customers, making money, generating revenue for Tesla. That's the number 2 item above. But then there's a number 4 item, which would be the cyber cab itself. Is it actually in production by the end of the year? How many are being produced? Is that going into Tesla's own fleet, or is it being sold to other people? How does that work? All of that will be the fourth largest impact, in my humble opinion. Number 5, the status of the Generation 3 consumer vehicle production. So not the 2.5, not the one at the beginning of 2025, but by the end of 2025, I'm not sure, but I think we're still looking at an unboxed Generation 3 vehicle, a much smaller vehicle, not this 2.5 vehicle. I don't know. It's a little unclear right now to me exactly what's going to happen with that 2.5 versus the number 3 vehicle, or maybe the 2.5 vehicle just becomes the unboxed vehicle. But where are we in that process? Because that car is also going to be used for robotaxis. In addition to the fact that it'll sell well. So that's going to be the number 4 thing. Number 5 thing. And then finally, the status of the 4680 cell production. So we're going to talk about that a lot more just here in a second. But if we get to the 100 gigawatts in Austin sometime later this year or next year, and then there's the lines in Reno, the line in Brazil, a second line in Austin, possibly a line in Shanghai. I mean, we could be talking about Tesla on the verge of becoming the largest manufacturer of lithium, of cells for automotive purposes and for storage purposes as well. All right. Well, there are many others, but those are the top 6 in my view, and go ahead and make your comments on that. So then Paige sends me another, I actually responded to him saying, here's the 6 things. He said, there's such a wide possibility based on which of those come true. And he says, well, I still like to know what your number is. What is your price target? So I then turned to GROK and I said, GROK, would you give me some idea of what the price targets are out there for the end of 2025? And this is what GROK says. He says for 2025, expectations range from a low of 381, a low by the end of 2025, a low of 381. Actually, there's one guy, a couple of guys that are 78 or whatever, from a low of 381 to a high of $800.70 with an average around 590. Dan Ives from Wedbush raised the price target to 300 for the next 12 months with a view towards 400 in 2025. Ron Barron Capital, expects Tesla stock to reach 500 per share in 2025. Freedom by 40 says he believes Tesla could reach 500 conservatively in 2025 or 2026. Real Meat Kevin suggests Tesla could be worth 423 plus with a 31 PE ratio in 2025. And then Stocks Can Do, he says he predicts an average price target of 590 for 2025 with forecast ranging from 381 to 800. All right, so what about my price target? But first, a message from my sponsor. Oh, that would be me. I'm Randy Kirk. Hi, have we met? I don't have any sponsors. Oh, there are people trying to get me to do commercials on this channel. I'm not interested. Now, I do sell some Cybertruck bottle openers nearer to Christmas. I'll be talking about it a lot. But other than that, I don't interrupt my program to sell you anything. And so because of that, and I'm not seeking sponsors, and I have really no interest in going that route, that means I could use your help. And I want to thank my new Patreon yesterday joining up, but I need more Patreon folks to help out to get the show to be a success, if you will, financially for me. So that would be something you could do in addition to the fact that you watch is fantastic. If you watch more than 7 minutes of any given show, that's doubly fantastic. If you like, subscribe, and notify, wow. All right. So what are my price targets? Okay, you already know a couple of these. Well, maybe you know all of them, but my price target prior to 1010 is 265. 265, that's my price target. All-time high, that 410, 411, whatever it is, that all-time high, that's when robotaxis start getting revenue and or when FSD no longer requires supervision, either one or both of those, then we go to all-time high, maybe more, but certainly to all-time high. And then 700 by the end of next year, assuming the robotaxi network has no drivers in it, and that Tesla cybercabs are rolling off the production line and going out into either Tesla's fleet or into a fleet of some kind, you and me buying them, whatever it happens to be. All right, so there you go. 700 is my bull case scenario for the end of the year, assuming those things take place. In any case, I think what would be my mid case in case some or all those things don't happen, I still think we'll be at all-time highs by the end of next year. Okay, and then we have this from Gary Black. He says, here's a question for those who attach high incremental value to Tesla Robotaxi. When does Tesla FSD get to 99.99, just 2 nines of efficiency? Well, he says that would be, approximately 1 necessary disengagement per 10,000 miles. And that would qualify it to claim level 4 autonomy and accept liability for damage or injury, which is needed to secure a robotaxi deployment license. I don't know what he's talking about. There's no such thing as a robotaxi deployment license. There's no such thing as regulations in most states and some countries. So I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about. And some of those things are under development right now, like in Europe, Australia, and even China. And then some states, I think, are probably working on something, but this may not be it. So he says, nobody ever puts all the possibilities in, oh, I'm sorry, this is me, not him. Nobody ever puts all the possibilities in one place. I'm going to try to do that for you right now. So number one, I think that the most likely thing is that the cars will be supervised at first. There will be a robotaxi network. You'll be able to call it on your app. You'll be able to put your car into service, as a robotaxi, but it will require a driver in the seat. And of course, the current level of that is hands-free, pretty easy. And then at some point, maybe it'll go to level 4 where you could be reading a book or watching a movie, but you'd have to be right there to be able to take over. And then at some point, level 5. I think that's kind of the most likely scenario. Number 2, maybe remote drivers at first and then slowly backed off. Now that could be a combination. So you could have an actual driver in the seat. You could have the remote drivers also testing and working on it and checking things out. You could have the remote drivers added when it gets to level 4. You could have the remote drivers added when it gets to level 5, but I think there will be remote drivers that'll be on call at some level. Number 3, special rules for taxi mode is absolutely, people say, oh, well, you don't need this, and why would Tesla have, processes and methods that aren't necessary? Well, but maybe they'll be necessary in the beginning, and maybe they'll be taken away later. But there'll be certain areas of driving that'll be off limits, like let's say parking garages or off-road. It won't be able to go off of actual roads. It has to stay on the road. Anyway, some kind of limitations on where the cars can go when they are in taxi mode. Okay. If your car has been called as a taxi and you have a fare in the car, then the software could say, okay, these things are off limits when that's the case. Number 4, anytime there's a fare in the car, there's a very special rule that goes into place, and that would be don't hit anything. Number 5, there could be a rollout like other folks have done, one city or area at a time. We've been talking about this for months and months and months. People seem to forget about this. It does not have to be rolled out nationwide or the entire United States all at once, and may not be able to be because of regulations in places like New York City that are tighter and harder than other places. So there'll be some kind of rollout that will not necessarily be nationwide, but it might also be very limited in the beginning, maybe just 1 or 2 or 3 cities. Number 6, Tesla could start with employees only as supervised drivers in the test period. So you'd only have, maybe they'd hire 300 or 400 people for a city like, starting in the land of Uber and maybe in like San Francisco, they would start there with Waymo, going up against Uber and Waymo right in their backyard. I don't know. Maybe they would pick a city that neither one of them are big in. I don't know, but maybe hiring a bunch of drivers, that might be another way to do it. And then maybe they would also, another way would be to start only with experienced Uber or Lyft or et cetera drivers who own Teslas or who buy or lease Teslas in order to participate. So it could start that way. So these are some of the ideas that I had. Maybe you can add yours in the comments below, but these are a few ideas that I had of how it might begin the process here after 10/10 or whenever the process does actually start. What do you think? Interested to know what you have in mind. All right. And by the way, I just to add this, Uber's ex-CEO mentioned that the complexity of dispatching the fleet is a big deal. And, you know, I was thinking to myself, AI could be a great way to help that dispatch problem. And maybe that's another piece of what Tesla will do and why they don't need an Uber or a Lyft to help them figure it out, that they know this is just an AI problem. Complexity is the thing that AI lives for. Cern Basher says, in just 101 days, Tesla has produced 50 million 4680 batteries for a lifetime total of 100 million. We talked about this last night. Maybe you've heard me talk about it already, but this is adding on. Cern's adding on to the story. This means that Tesla produced an average of 495,000 per day, according to, division. But Tesla probably didn't start producing 495 on the first day of that period and then produce the same amount each day. No, it was a ramp. There was like less than 495 when they started that 90-day period, and they ended with a much higher number over that period. What was the shape of that ramp curve? Well, it might have been steadily every day, each day producing a few more. That's unlikely. More likely, it has to do with numbers of shifts, numbers of lines in production. So you go along and you're producing, 500, 400, 450,000 a day. And then you say, okay, we're going to add a second shift. Now we can do 700,000 a day, or maybe you add a fourth shift, or maybe you add a second line, or maybe you've already got 2 lines, you add a third line. That's more likely how it's happening. And once you add those additional lines or those additional shifts, it should only take a matter of days before that line is pretty close to as successful, or that shift is pretty much as successful as the other shifts. So while he thinks it's unlikely, he thinks there's step changes. A third possibility is some kind of a curve. Perhaps the ramp was slow in the beginning. They found ways to ramp it up quickly. I don't think so. It just don't. My experience in factories, that's not how it works. He says we won't know for sure until the next battery production update, but this type of battery ramp of the 4680s could be quite significant for Tesla. He says, how significant? Well, 790,000 batteries per day instead of 495 would mean 26 gigawatt hours of energy, or about 214,000 Cybertrucks, okay? So if the run rate is really more like 1 million batteries per day, well, that's nearly 33 gigawatts hours of energy per year, and 270,000 Cybertrucks are enough battery production for the 250,000 that's planned, plus about 3,000 semi-trucks. All right. But then, of course, you get above that, you get enough to make all the semi-trucks, the 40,000 semi-trucks as well. Will Wall Street understand this, is what Cern Basher would like to know, and which is what I said yesterday I would like to know. Will there be a bump on Monday just based on the 4680 production? And he doesn't even go into the other things that I talked about yesterday, which is about all the money that they're going to make on the IRA, $45 a gigawatt hour, not gigawatt, a watt hour, I think. Anyway, I didn't look it up. I'm sorry. I will look it up and we'll have that conversation later. Okay. But whatever it is, it's a lot of money, a huge amount of money if they get to 100 gigawatt hours in terms of just the money that'll come from the federal government for this. And that doesn't count, again, the opportunity for spreading this into way more production and potentially becoming the largest producer of these types of batteries in the world. The goal is 500 in Reno, 500 gigawatt hours in Reno, 200 in Austin, 100 in Berlin, and I think 100 in Shanghai as well. Not as sure about that one, but if you add that up, that's 522. So that's 900 gigawatt hours of battery production. This would be massively important in terms of Tesla's future. Although in a world of robotaxis and Optimus, it's important, but it becomes smaller and smaller in importance as you add more and more robotaxis and Optimus. All right, well, that's what I got for you this morning. Later on today, we are going to have a report on the 15 companies that nobody's thinking about that are going to benefit from the huge robotic future. And this is put together by, I think, well, I won't say who because I'll get it wrong and then you'll laugh at me. I hate to be laughed at. Not really. Anyway, but it's a major financial house put together this list of companies that will benefit. These are the kind of companies you could buy into that nobody's paying attention to that could really get a big time benefit from robotics. Some of them will not be surprising. A few of them you might go, oh yeah, hadn't thought about that. So, and these are companies that are in the stages of adding these humanoid robots. So, or robots at some level, but humanoids certainly in the mix of their plans. So that's what we're going to do at around the, well, let's see, it's sorry that I'll probably come out around 1 o'clock, right in the middle to 1 o'clock California time. So, right at the exact time to interfere with your football. And then around 5 o'clock California time, we'll come out with the regular Monday night, well, Monday morning show, which comes out on Sunday night. It's so complicated, it's even difficult for me to remember, where we talk about all the financial things that are going to happen next week. And then this would be a perfect time, if you haven't done it yet, go down below, help the show, help me produce the show, join Patreon. It's been great talking to you.